So, folks, this man, you've probably, if you've been on TikTok, you've probably seen him quite often. Sadly, during the first chat that I had with Neal, I ended up having issues trying to keep the interview recorded. So I ended up with a silent movie version of a Neal Ford discussion. So this is Neal Ford, folks. He works or used to work in marketing. He has a website called storyfire.net where he actually uses the umpteenth amount of years of his own experience to actually do something that's creative. But the funny tale behind it is that his daughter actually got him into doing TikTok, and that's where I knew. If you listen to him, you find that he's calm, collected. um,
That's the
and
brand.
he reacted the same way as many people did when the ban on TikTok was becoming a reality. Myself personally, here in Canada, we don't have that ban. At least not until the government decides something otherwise. But the Supreme Court decided to withhold the ban currently, and President and seating Donald Trump decided to hold off on it and to give it some time to give ByteDance time to actually divest their business and pull out from the U.S. So Neal, uh, what's your point of view on this?
On all of the comings and goings of this
Yeah.
thing. It's it's a funny thing. There are levels of chess being played here, and I've in any occasion when I've had an opportunity to be close up on events that were subsequently reported on by news media, the resemblance of actual events to what was reported was so different and such a distance that it makes you throw up your hands and say, whatever it is they're telling you, I guarantee you that's not what's actually happening. And so I have to reserve my judgment as to what's actually taking place, only reflecting that whatever we think is going on, there are things happening behind the scenes that bear no resemblance to what is being said. And there's another thing which I've learned over the years, which is people that are wrong are often loudly wrong. And people say things with such confidence that you think they must know something you don't know, only to be revealed later that they've said a bunch of things with great confidence that turned out to be absolutely 100% mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel qualified to put my 2 cents in yet. We'll see how things shake out. I have my suspicions, but we'll leave those another date.
So, apart from the TikTok business, I know that a lot of the artists that actually use TikTok decided to build a petition. From what I remember seeing, and that was in the last 48 hours, it was a TikTok Inc., which is a U.S. subsidiary that runs TikTok here in America, with certain producers of content that were actually throwing their weight into the ring, decided to actually put that to the Supreme Justice to rule. And it was all about freedom of speech. So they were saying that the First Rights Amendment for the United States was being literally swept aside because they weren't seeing it as a valid point. And the Supreme Court, in the document, 28 pages worth, says that there's, I'm trying to remember the right words. and I don't know the right word. So they're basically saying that free speech is an option for everyone, but depending on it being uh, based on an actual speech where you don't see the person, and the difference between TikTok where you get to see someone doing it. Uh, there's a kind of weird difference in that particular regard, which is why they decided to actually hold off on applying the ban on the 19th. Now, mind you, when it did happen, it was a literal blackout where everyone decided that I'm saying goodbye. I'm not going to be able to do this anymore. But lo and behold, less than 4 hours after they did the blackout, they had it back up and running.
Yeah, it's suspiciously quick.
Suspiciously.
And having been connected at one point to coding and watching things have to get shifted over, that was remarkable. The update, how quickly it happened, and what's more, that when you suddenly came back onto your TikTok app, there was a fulminating thank you for our new president. Interesting. So you'll forgive me if I go on record as saying that I think we have turned a corner where the idea that a petition will have any effect on people is kabuki theater. I'm just now going on to Perplexity so that I can look up kabuki to see that I'm using that term right. But are you familiar with the idea of kabuki theater, the full drama, which is absolute,
absolutely planned out to actually be entertaining.
Right. So, yeah. Anyway, I consider this an unhappy subject, so I'm going to lay off of it as a.
That's okay. So, what's new in the land of Neal Ford?
Well, I am currently working on a program, traveling the country, shooting episodes of something called Good Company, which is it's stories about small businesses and people who are doing nice things for their communities and who are reflecting in business the better side of human nature. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you a couple of examples. There's a farm in Whitsett, North Carolina called Peace Haven Farms. And when adults have children who are mentally challenged, who are mentally disabled, it's very difficult. When you raise them, you can take care of them. But when you get to be of an age, say 85, where it's you that has to be in assisted living, what happens to these adults? And so Peace Haven exists in order to have a place for these people to thrive and live and find a community and be useful. And it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. When I was out there with my cameraman, Jeremiah, both of us were sort of stunned at how it left us feeling. We felt energized and positive, and that this kind of place is not just good for the people that are there and not just good for the parents that are now feel taken care of, but the community in which they reside is very positive about this being there. And it makes everyone feel like Whitsett is a fantastic place to be because this is how we are. It's very restorative to be there and to talk to these people. And not just the residents, but the people that take care of them, and to talk to the other people in the town who are aware of the presence of this place. And then we also went to a place called Brush Monster Industrial in Gadsden, Alabama, where it's a small place that they make very, very large industrial equipment for use on clearing brush and small trees from land for, if you have like an off-road track, or if you want to build a piece of property and you need to cut down some of the trees on it, these devices will help do that. And the number one number of employees that they have there are welders. So these are blue-collar guys that like to hunt, like to fish, and they're the two people that own this company, Tim and Hannah Meeks. Hannah has started a book club with the welders. And so they have them reading things like The Entrepreneurial Mindset. And it is just fantastic to watch the growth of these people, the little community that they have. And they're taking on giant Chinese industrial competitors and beating them at their own game. It's fantastic to see. So I'm out there. We're going to be telling the story of these places on YouTube as a series.
Okay. So when did you decide to actually do this? Because I know that you were very active on TikTok. You came from I'm trying to find the proper word. Your background was out of marketing, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Or as you put it succinctly, as the Italians say, it was just a cover. But when you decided to retire or get out of the business, you were put into task by your family, your children, to actually do something on TikTok.
Yeah, we had my children never knew my father, and I always considered it quite sad because I think he would have enjoyed their company and the people that they are. And they never knew him, which, gave me a sort of heartbreak. So I would make these videos that would record stories about my father and I, and my daughter suggested that maybe we would post one of them to TikTok, and it turned out to be very popular and get millions and millions of hits or views. And it turned out to be a very reassuring thing to see that other people were responding the way that anyone with a family does, which is they realize, we're all sort of on the same, plane. We're experiencing the human experience, and it's fun not to be rage baited or put upon with some selling message, but rather I'm just sharing this so that you can see how we're all in this together. It was popular. I've been torn, about putting commercial messages at the end of this. I try to do it very little because it feels like the medium is being abused by people with crypto scams and NFTs and various other forms of trying to use a medium like a TikTok, the channel, as a kind of way to victimize other people and take their money. It strikes me as both ignorant and if there is a hell, there's a ring there. It's going to be for just those people.
Yeah, pretty much. When did you decide to do this particular next chapter of your life where you're touring?
End of last year.
End of last year.
Yeah, because when I would come into contact with certain people, that you would shake your head and marvel how it's small business that restores your faith in humanity. Seemingly the goal of, you would think that the goal of most people graduating from college is to get rich. But it turns out it's not so. They want to make a difference. They want to be useful. They want to live a satisfying life. And when you get out in the world and you meet them, you realize that you can be successful enough to have a going concern and be prosperous and have lots of customers that are happy that you exist and do good things and make ethical decisions and not feel like you have to victimize somebody so that you can win the Squid Game. That one of the although you may not consider it great literature, there is something profound about the Hunger Games, the books and the movies, in this. They have this very cynical phrase which they use at the beginning and every end of every one of the competitions, which is, "May the odds be ever in your favor." Now just deconstruct that for a minute. It's not possible for the odds to be in your favor. Everyone is going to die except one. So they are very cynically spouting this at you as though the game is worthwhile. And I see this in much of our commercial transactions, this idea that, somebody has to win the lottery, so give me your money, and it strikes me that in the spirit of the Pygmalion effect. The Pygmalion effect is when you establish an expectation for someone's behavior and they live up to it. So when, in My Fair Lady or Pygmalion, the idea is I can take a gutter snipe off the street and I can give them the instruction and the faith that they're capable of being a grand dame, and then they live up to it and they don't disappoint you. Whether it's a police officer or a soldier or a student or anyone, when you set an expectation, this is how we behave, they will live up to it and they'll live down to it too. This is why it's so important that we not allow our values to be polluted, because people will live down to their expectations. So my reason for even doing the show is to be out there in the spirit of the Pygmalion effect, trying to remind people, it's quite possible to make a good living and still be a pretty decent human being. In fact, you're surrounded by companies like this. And so there you go. That's my inspiration and my message and my journey. Oh. Fingers crossed, you'll do well.
Well, I think I haven't ever thought of you being capable of failing at whatever you put your mind to it. Mind you, the first conversation, I actually remembered that I had to talk you down. That was an interesting first meet, but I'm glad that this time around I've got something that actually will record what we're saying. So that I can post it on TikTok, post it on YouTube, and give references. Now, did you build the YouTube channel specifically just under your name, or is it under a completely different banner?
It's just under my name. And what I will do is I'll open once we've got 6 or so programs under our belt and we've edited them and they're ready to go, I'll establish a special channel for it. But in the meantime, it's just on my own channel, and there's nothing posted yet. We're still wrestling with it. It's a funny thing that we discovered in the first 2 episodes. It's that all of the best conversations happen when the camera is not running, and this taught us that you've got to have the camera running all the time, and particularly in those moments when people aren't saying what they think they're supposed to be saying. The most delightful things come up when the camera's not running. One of them is, for example, Tim and Hannah Meeks are just the loveliest pair. She looks like a 5'0" beauty queen, and he looks like if Thor, God of Thunder, was a welder in Alabama. And the 2 of them, they're a couple of pistols. They are at each other all the time, but it's adorable. It's not hostile. They're just cute. And every once in a while they'll have a disagreement and they'll both storm off in different directions, frustrated and angry. And I saw this with my own eyes, Hannah comes marching back into the office and she says to Tim, "Well, I am ready now." And he says, "Ready for what?" She says, "I am ready to accept your apology." Isn't that fantastic? And I didn't get it on film.
Duh.
So we need to be, the camera's got to be running all the time, or you're never going to catch the best bits, the bits where people are themselves.
Yeah, it's the same adage when you're doing photography. Your camera has to be ready for any possible opportunity.
Yep.
Especially when you're taking a drive in the countryside and there's a bald eagle perched on top of a pine or an owl perched on top of a post that's close enough to do a good shot at. The camera's not there. By the time you actually get out of the car or you get closer, they fly off. So you're kind of SOL. And you try to do lesson learned type of remembrances for future prospects.
There's a marvelous phrase that they quite often use in connection with the NFL here, which is the best kind of ability is availability, meaning that your talents are of no value if you can't play because of an injury. And likewise in photography, the best kind of camera is the one in your hand when the moment strikes, right? So you got to have a quick draw camera in a holster all the time, because you don't know when something magnificent can happen.
Yeah, I've seen people do their own holsters with an old baby high chair bassinet. The high one, so that food doesn't get spilled on the floor. Well, they took it. They took 2, they repurposed it. Both camera people were wearing the holsters where the cameras could hang from based on what they designed into it. So they had 2 sets of cameras each with the lenses already attached and with the caps off so that they could actually just pick it up quick and use it on the opportunity without having to go back in the bag and take out another lens, install it, and so on and so forth. So yeah. But no, I don't. For myself, cigar and whiskey is not something I actually have in hand. I don't do cigars. Lord knows I don't mind the smell of it if it's being done by other people, but I enjoy my whiskey. Usually neat.
Well, yeah, I prefer things neat as well. Although when we were in Gadsden, Alabama, we were drinking Fireball bourbon and Dr. Pepper.
Mixed?
And what?
Was it mixed?
Yes. Yes. Now, you and I both laughed the same laugh. And then I tried it and I went, hey man, when in Rome. And it turned out to be one of those drinks where we pounded, like they're too easy to drink.
Yeah.
They're just like a spicy Dr. Pepper. We must have pounded about 4 of those.
Oof.
That's when I really wish we'd had the camera rolling, because Hannah Meeks wants to build a moat around their home.
Okay.
And wants to turn it into one of those lazy rivers, so that when you're on their property and you're over there in the summer, you can get in an inner tube and just go around the house. And I think it's an absolute delightful idea. And Tim is like, honey, that would take just months to build. And she says, I'm patient. I got time. And so when I expressed enthusiasm for it, I kept getting the side eye from Tim, like, don't you encourage her. He's going to get it eventually. He's going to get that.
Well, a moat, the only downside to a moat is like having a fish pond. It's just that I don't know what the laws are for that particular state when it comes to Clean Water Acts.
Yeah.
But I know here in the province of New Brunswick, anything that you build with water coming from the river, you literally have to put it back as was, or even cleaner than what it was.
Yeah, it's good law. I don't think they have it in Alabama.
Well, hopefully they'll have it eventually. The way things are going, I have a feeling that they'll probably need it.
Could be.
Could be. Any other plans that you're currently working on? Because you've got your thumbs in multiple pies currently.
Oh, not too many. I mean, essentially, what I do professionally is I have Storyfire, which is a course to help people be better storytellers in business, because there's a growing understanding that the power of something like this, like video, is an underestimated quotient in a company's ability to tell their own story, to position themselves in a market, for a CFO to be better understood about what the numbers mean and bring it to life in a way where people go, oh, that guy's really smart the way that he explained that.
Mm-hmm.
When an executive, a CEO, a CFO, or somebody angling to be one of those people, when they are able to explain something with visual interest and fascination, when they're able to rivet your attention, they become imminently promotable. And so I'm finding that I'm getting some traction in teaching groups and individuals how to do this. And I'll give you a very small example, but there was a CEO that I was talking to, that was helping in Canada, and he deals with petroleum products. His particular product is that they have a software which will help people looking for oil and natural gas. It helps them be 16% more accurate in finding it. And additionally, it's a lot faster. And he was able, hopefully with my coaching, he was able to paint this picture of how much of an advantage this was to somebody. And the thing we kept coming back to was in a world of blind people, the one-eyed man is king. And he was so effective at it that not only did the product do well, but he himself, he has tremendous charisma. But when he goes in and in the first 60 seconds, he can explain really vividly what they do, it makes people just assume he's, 15 IQ points smarter than even he is. It's a very valuable skill to be able to explain quickly and vividly what something means. In the age of devices, how cool is it if you yourself can leave a nice message for somebody in video rather than text? Because it contains all of the subtle nonverbals that are easily 60% of what we interpret. The difference between reading a text message and hearing it from somebody.
Yeah.
The differences are sometimes catastrophic,
Yeah.
when they don't have inflection. And the ability to be good on camera makes you vastly more promotable in today's business.
True.
I'm selling.
Apart from that, you're doing the going across the states and towns to actually do your good deed to the actual state of the U.S. currently. But any other things that you're currently dabbling in or trying out other than just being yourself and doing these two things?
It's pretty much just that. I find that the Storyfire, every week or every couple of weeks, we have a live call with all of the people that have signed on to the Storyfire Pro level. And, it's a funny thing. It was only supposed to be once a month. That was the deal. That's what you paid for.
Okay.
But we do it twice a month because I'm enjoying it too much. Go ahead. Sorry.
But that's the thing about doing something that you really enjoy, be it for free or be it paid. If it's a paid job where you're doing service to others but you're enjoying it too much, it's no longer a job. It's actual fun.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that you found that particular calling and you decided to make it something else entirely. I took a look at the website and it looks entrancing. For one, it's the design with consistency instead of just being haberdash in one end of the other and overloaded with too many graphics and too many links and too many thises and that's. But I can see. I'm even happy that you've got Canadian clients that decide to sign on. That speaks volumes when it comes to Canadian or international business.
Well, Canadians and Americans spiritually operate in the same dorm room as the Australians and New Zealanders. And there is a quality that you'll find in America's Midwest and in Australia and parts of New Zealand where they're very team-spirited. There's a particular team spirit with Canadians that's admirable. And I believe, this is a hypothesis, completely unproven. Here's my hypothesis, is that unlike Europe, where wars had been going on for thousands of years over this little snippet of land or that, this salient, and so forth, in both the Australian and the American continent, we spread west from small civilizations in the east. And as we spread west, nature was trying to kill people in Australia, in New Zealand, and the United States, particularly in Canada. You had to make sure you could count on your neighbor to survive this winter.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm guessing, again, this is a hypothesis, that people from Saskatchewan and Alberta are probably the most team-spirited of all the Canadians. That could be wrong, but anyway, it's when nature tries to kill you, when nature's really trying to kill you, that's when people are at their best.
Yeah.
That's when they rely on one another, and it's vulgar not to be able to trust someone.
I'd like to say that the hypothesis would hold true, but there's exceptions. There's I don't know if you ever heard of the ice storm that happened in Quebec in the early 90s, where it was freezing rain that lasted more than a day, to the point that it actually covered cars, covered the streets, but even more damning, it covered the high tension power lines and collapsed them. The weight was overbearing. They've redesigned their tension lines to actually generate heat, so that now the lines will never freeze and never have a load over what they actually designed. The only problem is that during this, the lot of people in Quebec that were on the main power grid for the province didn't have access to backup generators. They were scrambling for backup generators, and some vendors decided that, oh, this is the proper time to actually jack the prices by 1,000%.
Yeah.
We
There's always some a-hole.
a profiteer is basically what it is, and they don't.
Fortunately, most of us, that's only about 1.4% of the population. That there was I wish I could remember the actual study, but in the United States, they did I can't remember what university did this. I think it might have been Rutgers, which is in New Jersey. And that the hypothesis and conclusion was that in order to ruin state government, it only took 70 members of the mafia. That's all it took. It just took 70 guys to completely ruin the state's government. And that strikes me as, that sounds about right. That it doesn't take many to, but normally speaking, when there is a major natural disaster, people tend to be at their best as they emerge from it. And I highly recommend a book called Humankind by Rutger Bregman, which is about how people will do that very thing. Also, the book Tribe by, what is his name? I wish I could remember. They're both very reassuring when it comes to how human beings are meant to live with one another. The difficulties arrive when we become a society that concentrates power into very, very few hands. That's when being a human being becomes a trial. When you can't rely on your neighbor, and when systems have grown up to isolate us from one another. This device, in TikTok and so forth, I post shut off of TikTok, I can almost guarantee you it is not going to get better. It's almost certainly going to be enshittified by a few people who are trying to grab hold of this thing that was inadvertently popular.
Yeah. The problem with any media, in my opinion, is that it doesn't take much for it to be abused.
Yeah.
If you do it for the right reason, I'll give you an example, my personal example. When I decided to go into YouTube, I first started by scrolling and looking at people, and I felt this need that I had to give them congratulations and thanks for what they were doing, but not in writing. At the time when I got on, the video response option was still an option on YouTube. They took it off quite a few years ago because it was causing issues with loads of information that weren't required for their functionality. But at one point, I didn't notice that I was actually doing it. I was younger. I'm 50 now, but I was using Smurfs to actually say, you won the Jokey Award for your comedy. You won your entrepreneurial spirit with Papa Smurf, and so on and so forth. But they gave me a title, an unofficial title that was called the Reman of YouTube, because I had so many response videos for musicians, for comedians, for people that were giving us recipes and whatnot that were available on that particular option. And then I discovered TikTok, and that's where I discovered you. And then I started collecting a cornucopia of people. And if you take a look at my YouTube channel, I've got interviews with musical artists across the board when it comes to blues and jazz, or interesting people depending on who's available. Unfortunately, I have yet to meet an interesting person that's as available as you are. All of them have speaking engagement requirements, which is like $5,000 plus if you need to have an interview with them. It's like, no, man.
Yeah. Well, lucky you, I'm not that smart and I'm not that popular. But have you heard of Pomplamoose? Do you know who they are?
Yeah, I know both of the artists. I still have yet to do anything with them in regards to doing an interview because they're both they're both very busy, especially because Patreon was designed by one of the band members.
Hmm. Well, I find them a very interesting case study because clearly they're remarkably creative people. But it is almost as if they were 15 years too early or too late. Like the style of music that they do, they're having to adapt to very different circumstances of what it means to be a recording artist now. That they might have been something akin to, one of those bands that spends 10 years super popular in, say, Seattle, and then they break open. They just burst open, and all of a sudden they're touring. But the circumstances of touring and remuneration and everything from the way that Spotify gives you a fraction of a penny compared, or that a venue, most of the money is going to Ticketmaster. It's they don't exist in a world that truly supports musicians anymore, not in the way that it used to.
No, but the Natalie, I think it's Natalie, Dawn,
Yep.
and Jack. I can't remember his last name. Both of them started off in a garage. They had the garage was sporadically stacked with musical instruments and accoutrements and accessories to actually do their craft. Because they specialized, I know Jack specialized on his own in doing video music shots so that every single musical instrument that was being used was actually being filmed at the same time. So you knew that it wasn't something that was done after the fact. I scratch my head a bit because with technology you can do a lot of things and you can fake a lot of things, but the core of my being says that that's not the case with them. And then they got together eventually and they created Pomplamoose, and they started creating music of their own, and that grew out of the garage into an actual bona fide recording studio that they designed specifically for both their needs. They did some touring, they did some shows. I still think that they're doing recording material. I know if you go on Spotify, most of the material is available there, but I remember buying a flash drive with some material as part of a promotion that they were doing. But yeah, no, it is difficult in today's society when it comes to music to actually make a living out of it. A lot of the musicians that I know, other than the very grand ones, and even then, some of the grand ones are still in the same boat where they end up having to do a part-time job that they want to do to support the other side of their creative life, which is usually doing music, playing in a band, doing some touring. But that's unfortunately no longer than the early 1900s, where if you were doing a tour, you were doing a tour and you were making kind of a decent wage at it. But with Ticketmaster becoming grabby is probably the best way of putting it, because they want everything and anything under the sun through their portal.
Yeah. It's a very successful monopoly.
It is, unfortunately, but there's a few ways around it. You can still sell tickets without Ticketmaster being involved. You do it yourself. You have a touring manager book the gigs, make sure that the people go there, and you open up a site so that people can actually do purchases. in advance, or purchases right at the door, and then you play with that. Usually, my experience was selling tickets in advance was literally selling tickets to people for a dance event where I said, okay, well, it's going to be $5 discount if you buy it in advance. If you buy it at the door, it's going to be the full price. So I did a dance that lasted for 4 hours, and I had people show up at the last minute wanting to actually come in and do some dancing. They came late night, so I gave them a break. I just decided, okay, just pay me this and you're fine. But yeah, no, that's pretty much it. So
Well,
I'm trying to think of things to say.
well, my phone battery is surely dying. How are we doing on time?
On time? Well, I've got 41 minutes. I'm probably going to be doing editing.
How long did you want to go for?
I'd say we'd stop now. If you want, in 6 months I can contact you again and we'll see what we have.
All right. Yeah, well, by then, the show is either a full-fledged thing or it's, oh, yeah, that didn't work out. So.
Well, you have to give yourself some time and see how it goes and what the response is. Once you get your first 6 shows, the stats, the analytics should give you some kind of feel as to, do I want to continue with this? Are we doing great? Can we monetize it? Can we do something that supports us to make sure that we have everything that we need? Because you'll need to change a laptop, change the camera, change the modality, the travel, the expenses, the fuel.
Well, my goal is for it to be such a going concern that we can just basically live on the road doing the show. Like that's life, is going from place to place and doing the show and then putting it up and particularly so that it's the sort of thing where, hey, we're going to be in Sheridan, Wyoming. It's like, oh, well, maybe we should see if we can go meet these people. And then next thing you know, I'm in the Luminous Brew House and there's 5 people from Denver. Hey, nice to meet you. It's a crazy cool thing to hope for.
Okay. Well, if there's one person I know that can do it, it's you.
oh, thank you, Yannick.
Anyways, I'll let you go so you can relax and plan your evening. And I'll touch base with you in 6 months.